Welcome back to episode 78 already.
Yeah, how is that even possible?
In the Shadow of the Evening Trees. I'm Jen Von Ebers.
I'm Dave Von Ebers. Sometimes David.
Sometimes Jen, sometimes Jennifer, never Jenny.
Never Jenny. I don't go by Jenny either.
Unless somebody did something that is Jenny's fault. It's not my fault. Jenny
it's
did
your evil
my
alter ego.
Yes. I kind of feel like Mr. Rogers. I put a cardigan sweater on if you're just listening to it, because I was a little chilly. Because even though it's April, the first week of April, it is still winter in Chicago.
Yeah, it pretty much is. And it's going to be winter until June, and then it's going to be an inferno.
Yes.
Until like August or September. Our cat Gordy is chiming in.
She wants to sit on our lap. So maybe she wants attention right now.
Perfect timing. That's why we decided to do our podcast now, because
I know, and she's literally been so sweet all day and been on my lap. She sat behind me during dinner on my seat.
Yes, with one paw against you.
Yeah, and of course now that we're, pivoted to something else and she wants our attention, it's like having a toddler on the house.
Well, it's very much like having a toddler.
It is. So no tequila tonight. We that was I don't remember
that you know of.
Yeah.
this giant University of Illinois water bottle could be filled with tequila.
And this also bedazzled water bottle. I got a new water bottle that has fun stickers on it, so that's also fun.
You did. That's awesome.
So yeah, we decided we weren't going to have tequila with this episode. Like we did the last two times.
Jennifer got a little out of control the last time. We had to pause a couple of times.
We did.
We had to give her, a moment to calm down.
Exactly. But we hope you guys are having a good day and good weekend. We started the day out strong with our walking club.
We did.
And that was really nice. And the weather was amazing.
I'm going to sit like this and stare thoughtfully into the...
And... so it's been a good start to our weekend. We also have plans tomorrow with members of our walking club, which is funny. Is we had mentioned before, like the reason why we joined the walking club was to get to know people, because we moved to our community.
No, that's the reason why you joined.
The reason
I joined to get some exercise.
Yes, and to also meet people.
I'm not as sociable as
through Jennifer.
But, she hooked me in.
But as we mentioned before, we moved to our town 4 years ago after spending our whole lives in one area.
Yeah.
And that's weird. Living in a same town for a long time, I don't think many people do that anymore.
I don't know.
But
that's
I don't know. That would be a good question. Have you lived in the same town that you grew up in?
Post a comment and tell us.
We would love to know.
Have you lived in the same town since childhood?
Yes, I would love to know that.
I would too.
So it has been a nice opportunity, and maybe a few months ago, somebody in our group is actually in plays local. That's going to be our next thing.
As an adult, no, we you still have to conquer the karaoke.
Oh yes, we still have to find local karaoke, and then we can try to do local theater.
The world famous
international
karaoke star.
Star.
I still say you are an international karaoke star because you did it in Mexico.
I did.
But in order to be a worldwide karaoke star, you have to
bring it to the U.S.
Yeah, you have to do it in more than one country.
So that's on the list.
And then plays.
Right, and then
well, I was going to say ad lib. What am I trying to say? Comedy.
Yes. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like Michael Scott.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is what you call old age.
Yeah. Improv.
We're going to start doing improv. We just did a little improv right there. I wasn't actually forgetting.
Ta-da!
I was playing, and see.
Right.
I was playing a role.
Yeah, improv will be next. But we got invited to go to a play that our friend is going to be in, and invited to dinner afterwards with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun.
But it's a school night.
It is a school night. So we did all our activities of getting grocery shopping and cleaning and doing all this stuff today. So that was good.
It's funny because when we do this, we always say today, tomorrow, this week, next week, and no one ever knows when we're actually recording. It happens to be as we're recording it, and we probably won't post it until Sunday.
Right, but today
happens to be Saturday, April 5th.
2025.
And 2025. Every so often I say we should make a point of saying when it is that we're And then I forget, as soon as the words come out of my mouth, I forget that I said we should do that.
Yes. But here we are. And we wanted to talk tonight a little bit about an event that we've talked about before. True. Is the Bon Foster event from Lambda Legal, which is happening at the Art Institute, a gala.
At the Art Institute of Chicago.
The Art Institute of Chicago. David and I are on the host committee. And part of the...
we are the host committee. No, yeah, there are other people.
We're the MCs.
They're
looking for...
more influential people.
So much more influential people than us.
Why they let us join. No, that's not true. We're committed.
We are.
We're good at it.
But part of it is planning for the event, and then fundraising is another part of it. So we just set up our fundraising page, which we will post on our website, so you can take a look at it. Any amount is $5 is fine. I mean, any amount. I know people are struggling right now, and there are a lot of things and a lot of needs, and the reason why
because tariffs.
Yeah, because the reason why we're so passionate about Lambda Legal is they offer free legal assistance to people who need help in the LGBTQ plus community, which is a lot right now.
Yeah, and they really do a lot of. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but they really do a lot of. They've got multiple lawsuits going right now against the Trump administration representing, different organizations and interests and people challenging the ban on transgender members of the military, the ban on gender-affirming care. They also are working with the NAACP and some other organizations challenging Trump's executive order on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they do a lot of that kind of advocacy, challenging government action and to a large extent that harms marginalized people generally, but also specifically people in the LGBTQ plus community.
Correct.
And so that's a big part of why we've gotten involved in the last few years. As I think we might have mentioned before, the son of one of our good friends happens to work for the organization as well. But in any event, I kind of interrupted you.
Oh my gosh, no, that's fine. But it is just something that is needs our help, kind of thing. And especially when the community that is being attacked, I would say, and it is attacked, is so tiny, so small. The transgender community in the United States is so small compared to everybody else in the United States that the focus on them particularly is just it makes no sense.
It makes no sense, and they're not the ones causing the price of eggs to go up or any of the other things that people claim cause them to vote for Donald Trump. Has nothing to do with people who are trans or queer people generally or anything like that.
And as you all know too, and if you are not familiar too, our oldest daughter is transgender, so that even makes it more personal for us that we don't want to see her just worry about anything, just living her life and living the best to her life and everything without having to worry about like all these stupid things that are coming down the pike that can affect her life, kind of thing. And we've talked to her about it, a little bit about, the things that are going on with this administration, but it's also like, you don't want to be bringing somebody down as well. And it's just like, and if they're trying to like, just live their lives and get a little bit of it, she doesn't need us to be on top, be like, well, what do you think about this?
And we don't want that, on the one hand, obviously you want to show that you care and that you're willing to try to do something, but you also don't want to make that the sole focus of like your relationship with your own child. I mean, we are her parents and she is, and we've talked about this before, when a person comes out as transgender, they acknowledge that they haven't changed. You have a different understanding of them. They may have a different understanding of themselves, but they're the same person they always were.
Right.
So she's always been our child, and I mean, she's an adult now, but our progeny, if you will. Well, that's kind of a lawyer term, I think. Progeny. And we, the relationship, the fundamental relationship is parent and child, not advocate and transgender person, even though we want to, obviously, as parents, your inclination is to fight, for your kids, which is a good inclination, of course. But that can't be the entire relationship you have with your child or with a friend who's transgender or queer or whatever. It's important to show support, but it's also important to have a regular relationship with that person.
For sure. And we, in our town, like across the United States, have been protests about things last week. And we didn't participate because our youngest daughter was in town, but and we didn't make it in time. But there was a protest about trans rights in our town. And we knew people who attended from our walking group, actually. And so many people turned out and were in support, which we think is amazing because, it is something that is at the forefront right now. And for people to go out in public and talk about it is so amazing. And, even at this time, there's so many people who are hearing things from certain sources that are not correct, or their views are only seen from one place. And David and I were just talking about this today, especially in the trans community, for the people who are scared of trans community, of being against them, saying bad things, wishing harm on people.
Oh, for sure.
And it's like, have you ever met somebody who's transgender? No,
they haven't.
And so that makes us even more angry because it's like you're talking about somebody that you don't even know.
Yeah.
A perfect example is this week where there was a fencing competition, and somebody who was a fencer was transgender, and the other person decided not to forfeited because they were like, no, I'm not going to do this. And I saw some people on the internet say, how terrible, this is, that, this is happening, and they should let trans people in the community to be able to participate in sports and everything. And I was just like, if it was our daughter who wanted to do something, do whatever you want to do, and everything. And it shouldn't be any reasoning at all. And we've talked about this before. It's the equating to somebody saying it's not fair that Michael Jordan gets to play basketball because he's so good. If somebody's athletic and they have talent and they get to be on professional sports and they get to do everything, yes, you are given many different opportunities that regular people do not get to have at all. And in that capacity, it's the same thing. You're not stronger than somebody because you're transgender. You're not faster. You're not anything. You have the ability that you have.
And that's right. And even if there's some advantages that a trans woman might have in certain sports, and there's a lot of science that says that really isn't true, because if you are on hormones and going through that type of transition, you lose a lot of the muscle mass and the fast twitch abilities and everything like that. So it's not even at all clear that trans women necessarily do. But even if you think they might in some sports, it's not in every sport. There are definitely certain sports that women have advantages over men. There's a crazy long distance. It's not a marathon. It's not even an ultra marathon. It's many ultra marathons in a row that takes place out in California. And for years, there was a woman who won the race outright every year, because it's quite possible that some women have more endurance than men in terms of running. But I'm not, I'm thinking about fencing. We're not talking about, wrestling, boxing, or whatever, fencing. And I don't know the woman who dropped out and whether or not there was more to the story than that. But I wonder if, in reality, anybody would really have too much of an advantage in fencing, which is more about, coordination, dexterity, quickness, then it's not about brute strength or whatever. But it's become sort of the universal, excuse. And we've talked about it before, but look, that's the way sports are. People are born with physical advantages. They're also, by the way, sometimes, a lot of times for athletes, it's also the mindset. It's not even just physical advantages. Where one person might be born with the genetic makeup that they have attention deficit disorder or something like that, which will make it hard for them to focus. Another person is born with a great ability to focus, and that's almost as important as their physical skills. So,
it is true.
Yeah. Think about standing there. Shoot, I think I've even used this example before. In a crowded basketball court on the opponent's court, and you're trying to shoot last-second free throws to win a game or to come from behind, and the opposing crowd is going nuts, and the guy or the woman standing at that free throw line is not even paying attention to the crowd, can tune it out and make those shots. That's not something I could do. It has nothing to do with physical abilities. Some people have a mindset like that, and some of that is actually innate. It's not all just, well, you worked really hard to concentrate. No, some of it's actually innate. That's why some people have anxiety disorders or mental illness or, like I said, attention deficit disorder, and may not be able to handle the stress of that moment the way another athlete is. So it's not even just physical ability, but look, our physical abilities are not evenly distributed.
Right.
Not among men, not among women, not among transgender people or intersex people or whatever. There are people who have physical advantages that are innate. They just are. And so you could say, yes, well, this is one we can't abide by. And again, I'm not even sure it's true, but let's assume for the sake of argument that there's some physical advantages that a trans athlete will have in some sports, in some situations. Even if that's true, there's all kinds of athletes that just have advantages over other athletes that they're born with. It is true that some people have the genetic makeup where they're going to be taller, they're going to be bigger, they're going to be faster, they can run faster, they have quicker reflexes. And those folks will, because of their innate gifts, have some advantages in sports. And that's just, if you don't understand that or you don't appreciate that, then you don't really understand sports. That is what sports are all about. I mean, there's a lot more obviously that goes into it. People work hard, they train, they learn the sport. I'm not trying to put down anybody's, the effort that people put in, but to pretend that it's just effort and that every athlete is starting on a level playing field, you're lying to yourself if you think that's true, because it's not. And if you actually pay attention to sports, that's not true.
And the other thing is unfortunate about it is the person in question does not want to be in the spotlight, and that's the other thing. It's like, it shouldn't be that
the competitor,
yes,
the trans competitor.
It shouldn't have to be in the newspaper because they're trying about it, controversy or anything. If it was our child doing that, we would obviously support her and be like, this is amazing, that's awesome, do the best you can. But then to have it turned around to be like, somebody's quitting because they want to participate in something, and then next thing you know, it's on national news and all over the place that their name is plastered over. And so that's not fair.
And you got to wonder too, with the woman who drops out, was who was putting that idea in their head? Maybe it's something they just felt, but I don't know what age. I don't know what age group.
They were young adults,
right? So was it the parents who were telling them this is unfair? Was it a coach who was telling them that? Was it stuff they saw on the internet or whatever? You wonder about the influences on that person, and may have been none of those things. That person may be the way they feel about it, But nowadays, I'm always suspicious in these circumstances. And we've also talked about this before. There are a lot of circumstances in which you'll have a cisgender girl or woman competing, and people who are so obsessed with trans people and so, believe that trans people are hiding around every corner will target a cisgender girl or a cisgender woman because they don't think that athlete looks like they're cisgender.
Right.
And they'll, there was a story a few years ago where some young girls, like 13 years old, running in a track meet, and some guy comes out of the stand, some older guy, and tries to stop the race because he's convinced that she's not a girl, in quotation marks. Of course, she wasn't trans. During the last Olympics, there were people questioning whether, I'm not even going to say her name because she's a wonderful, wonderful athlete, but a very, very, very successful American swimmer. People were questioning whether or not she was transgender, and it's utter nonsense. She's absolutely not. And she's been in many Olympics and done extremely well, but all of a sudden people get this kind of, sickness in their head.
There must be a reason why
There must be a reason.
Yeah.
And of course, look, swimmers, this is why I was a high school swimmer, but I wasn't that good. Swimmers have big upper bodies that you have to have powerful arms. You're using your arms almost more than you're using your legs. So a woman who swims her whole life will have muscular arms. She will.
Right.
That's how sports work. So,
successful swimmers have similar body types.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Right.
So
that's
they always
true.
have
Men and women.
very long arms.
Big shoulders.
So it doesn't matter.
Well, that's the other thing is in swimming, as I said, I was a swimmer. If you're a taller competitor and you have long arms and you have long legs, it's much easier to swim faster. Michael Phelps. I don't know if this is true, but I heard that one of the things about Michael Phelps is that he does not develop lactic acid in his muscles when he trains. So his muscles don't get sore when he trains. I mean, again, that doesn't take anything away from the work that he put into it.
Or the
work any other
his whole life, right.
Right. It doesn't take anything away from it. But you gotta get your head out of your rear end, man. People have advantages, physical and mental advantages in certain sports. It's just the way it is. And look, if what you're saying is, yeah, but this is an advantage, and in quotation marks, this is an advantage I can't accept. To just say it. Just say, I can't accept that trans athletes might have a certain advantage, even though I know every other athlete does. If it's about discrimination, just be honest with us. Mm-hmm. Just say, I don't like trans people. I don't like trans athletes. I don't want to have to see them. I don't want to have to think about it. At least out yourself as a bigot, because, to people, I've been a sports fan my whole life. I was a swimmer. We've run marathons. Mm-hmm. You've played sports. We know a little bit about sports. And we also know that there are people who have advantages over other people. And you're never going to equalize that.
Right.
Whether it's talking about you can get rid of trans athletes in sports, but someone is still going to have an advantage over your precious little darling who's trying to get a college scholarship. That's the reality, man. Your kid is not necessarily going to be the best, the fastest, the smartest athlete. And the other competitors, they're not going to sit back and say, oh, well, your little darling needs that college scholarship, so I won't try as hard. I won't work as hard. It's like the kid in The Incredibles who has to hold back when he runs the track meet. No one's going to do that for your little darling who needs a college scholarship. Sorry that I got off on that rant, but it's true.
But it is true when you said about mindset, because doesn't your physical ability to do things, there could be two people who have identical physical abilities, and one in their head is thinking like, I need to quit, I can't do this, I have to stop. And the other one is like, you've got this, keep going, everything like that. So that's a perfect example. Right. It doesn't matter what kind of ability you have if you have that mindset of no quitting.
And a lot of this too is, driven by parents who believe, are like living vicariously through their kids. Absolutely. Who are athletes. And they want to believe that their kid is the best, and they want to believe that their kid is going to, get a scholarship or become a professional athlete and so forth. And it's like, everybody has dreams. There was a story about some very young boy who was a good football player, and they called him Baby Gronk because he had some of the characteristics of Gronkowski, the great tight end, and now retired. Would he play for the Patriots?
Yes.
And his dad was really kind of driving him hard to be good. And I'm not trying to criticize the parent and everything like that, but a lot of people were looking at this scenario and saying, the dad's trying to kind of relive his youth through his son. And, the dad said, oh, he's having a great time. He's having a great, maybe so. And that's fine, right? I can't judge some other parent because I'm not there. But what kills me about it is, first of all, it's a perfect example of somebody who's just kind of born with the right body type to play a certain position in football. And, he's got a lot of physical gifts. You're not going to convince me that a kid who's 8, 9, 10 years old got all of that through working hard.
Yeah.
Through lifting weights or something like that. No, he was born with those kind of physical advantages. And again, God bless him. And if that's what he wants to do, I hope he plays football in high school and college and goes far, if that's what he wants to do.
That's a big question.
But the kid next door, who's as every bit as valuable a human being as the baby Gronkowski, shouldn't be held back, or what about the opportunities for that kid? I'm not saying take opportunities away from athletes, but what about why should it be that, my kid can't go to college unless they get a football scholarship or a track and field scholarship?
Yes.
Why should that be? I'm not opposed to those scholarships, but why should anyone's future depend on whether or not they can play sports so that gets them into college? I mean, that's kind of a messed up thing.
It's so messed up. And that's the thing, is the percentage of kids who, even if you can get to college, get on a scholarship, who actually can do that for a living is so tiny. So tiny, so it's like you spend your whole life thinking that you can do something, and, you're going to make millions and multi-million dollars and get all these signing deals and everything. And it's just like, no.
Well, that's the other thing. And I know we've talked about some of these things before, so I probably sound like a broken record, but I happen to think there are some legitimate reasons to have athletics in school, to have high school athletics, to have college athletics. I think that there are reasons why sports programs actually fit in an academic environment. But let's not kid ourselves. It's supposed to be an academic environment. That really is the main purpose of high school, college, whatever. They're not supposed to be farm teams for the NFL and the NBA and the WNBA or the U.S. Olympic team or whatever. That's really not the point, and that's not necessarily why. That shouldn't be the sole reason why you want your kid to play sports. I would think that you'd want them to play sports because it actually is helpful in that whole environment. It teaches them how to work on a team. It teaches them how to have certain responsibilities. It teaches them how to get up early in the morning a lot of times.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's things about it that complement the academic experience. But those things that complement the academic experience aren't about winning championships and setting records and getting a college scholarship or playing on the Olympic team. Those are things that benefit kids whether or not they win a single game, set a single record, come in first or last place in a track meet. And so it really challenges our thinking about sports and academics. I do believe that they have a valid place at every level. But what is that place? It's not, teams and athletic programs don't exist just so a small number of kids can get college scholarships. They don't exist because we want to be able to say we won a state championship. They don't exist just because some kid might have a chance to go and win a gold medal. And those things do happen. My uncle was a very, very successful high school gymnastics coach.
Yes, he was.
He won state championships with both boys and girls teams. He had students who went on to be on the USA gymnastics team, okay? So, I mean, that's phenomenal. That's really, really cool. But he also always viewed himself as a teacher. First and foremost, I had a conversation with him about this very topic.
I remember you telling me that.
Late in life. And he talked about his role. He always viewed his role as being a teacher. And he was very successful at what he did, and he got athletes really far, but it was the teaching that mattered. And that's what I'm saying.
And it was probably the teaching that the kids remembered too, not having the that kind of only one track mind.
Absolutely right. And so I just think, this isn't an anti-sports thing. It's just that we gotta kind of have there has to be a come to Jesus moment in America about sports, because we don't seem to understand it. We're obsessed with something that we don't really seem to understand. And I'm not saying I'm a genius just because I was on a high school swim team, but I think that there are people who have a better understanding of what it is and how it fits in our society, and that there are people who just have this really distorted and kind of off the wall attitude about what sports are and the importance and what's important within sports,
True.
And a lot of that, I mean, this issue is of trans athletes is kind of like the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to think about and talk about and confront than just whether or not an individual trans athlete plays in sport. That's really a pretty minor issue compared to what I think is a real distortion of what sports should be in our lives.
And the other thing is, for people who think that trans athletes shouldn't be in the same locker room, shouldn't be in the same, area as other people. And it's like more straight people have been harmed by coaches and things like that than any transgender person has done to anybody else.
Which also kind of ties into the whole sports issue. I mean,
right.
Who are the abusers of children? I mean,
coaches, doctors.
Right. There are people who are in those kinds of positions of trust, right? That where parents think, well, I'm sending my kid off to...
I'm dropping them off. They're fine.
Yeah. I want my kids to be, in a sports program. I want my kids to go to a parochial school. Then years later, you find out that one of the priests was abusing the kid. That happened. I actually knew. He didn't lay a finger on me. Maybe I should be offended by that. But no, that's terrible. But no, there was a priest at a parochial school that I went to who many, many years later, we found out had abused some of the kids who were around my age. Now, I never would have guessed that in a million years. I won't even say his name, but I remember his name. So, and I'm not saying that there's any particular profession where, where you can't trust the people involved in it. But think of the big abuse scandals we've seen. It's the Boy Scouts of America. It's the Catholic Church. It's USA Gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned one time before there was a big lawsuit here in Chicago over an amateur volleyball league and a coach who allegedly was abusing kids. Sports, youth pastors, priests, people who are in positions, and you mentioned, I think, well, I don't know if you mentioned teachers, but I just saw a story from our local paper about a teacher who apparently was abusing kids. And obviously not all priests do that, not all coaches do that, not all Boy Scout leaders do that or anything. But those are we entrust our kids to people who we really don't know what they may or may not do. But that's a much bigger concern than some trans kid using a locker room or playing on a sports team. And I'm sorry, I kind of repeated what you just said, but
no, that's okay.
You're absolutely right.
But but nobody talks about that scenario, kind of thing. And it's always just like they feel like, and I've always felt this for anybody in the LGBTQ plus community is anytime they're talked about or thought about, it always goes to something sexual.
Yes.
And it's like, how come you don't say that to a straight person, kind of thing. Nobody in the straight community is, you're like, oh, you're straight, then, ooh, you must be, whatever.
Right.
And that has always just bothered me. Like, it has nothing to do with sex at all.
Yeah. And the, like the whole, oh my gosh, drag queens reading kids' books to kids, they immediately go to this place that has nothing whatsoever to do with what happens at those events. You're talking about first of all, drag is not an orientation. It's not an identity.
Correct.
It's a mode of performance and fashion, basically. That's what it is. You can be straight and do drag. You can be gay and do drag. You can be trans and do drag. But it doesn't necessarily correspond with those things. So that's one important thing. The other thing is a person who puts on kind of outrageous, and I don't mean revealing or sexual, but just kind of outrageous clothing and makeup and stuff like that, and sits down and reads a kid's book. If you're finding something sexual in that thing, in that event, I think the problem is you, not the drag queen, who's just reading a book.
Right.
How is it, I'm sitting here, I'm reading Goodnight Moon, and I have loud makeup on and a big wig and stuff. I'm not seeing the sexuality there.
No.
I'm not seeing anything that is remotely sexual. And if you think it is, but it is weird. Some, not all straight people, but some straight people are like incredibly obsessed with sex and incredibly obsessed with the sex lives of gay people and trans people and everything else. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't understand that at all.
Are you like, you see your neighbors come out to get, go to work in the morning, and you're like, wonder what they did last night.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
I'm not the smartest person and the sharpest knife in the drawer or whatever, but I just, those thoughts don't occur to me.
No.
When I see anybody.
That is true. So yeah, it is, it's kind of crazy town. But the other thing that we always want to say on this channel for our page is we know that a lot of you are surrounded by people who may not think like you, and everything. Yeah. And you might feel like this is what I want to do. We met somebody today, we talked to somebody today who's having trouble. And they're, family of just the things that they're advocating for. All the crazy stuff that's going on with politics and the trans community and everything, and is really struggling with that right now. And we want to be a place where if you are also surrounded by people who don't agree with you, or you are the only person in your family or work with and everything, you can always talk to us, kind of thing. If you don't want to talk publicly, you can always leave us a direct message on our Instagram, and we're happy to have a conversation with people, because it is hard nowadays just to, we told our friend today, like, you are doing the right thing, kind of thing. Don't let other people change your mind about what you really feel is right and what people are struggling with and what you want to change, in the world. Barack Obama had a talk this week, and one of the things that he said is like, change happens with ordinary people. It's not he's like, it's the citizens, and that really hit me, because it's like, it's true. You don't have to be in politics, you don't have to be on a school board, you don't have to be in any kind of capacity on any elected thing. Everybody has a voice, and everybody counts, and everybody matters. So I always just say, just do what you want to do.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's a bad situation, obviously, right now, but we aren't powerless yet. We may be at some point if things keep going the way they're going, but we're not powerless yet. We're talking about the protests that the Trans Day of Visibility thing wasn't so much a protest as just a showing up for trans people. But, there were protests all around the country today. We drove past a big group of folks out protesting. We're going to the grocery store. They were out actually trying to change the world, but, we gave them up. We honked the horn and gave them the thumbs up. I had, a longtime friend of mine text me a picture from an event that he was at. I saw
thousands of people in downtown Chicago.
Yeah. And so, it's easy to be cynical about those protests because, there were big protests at the start of Trump's, first presidency, first term, and here we are again, dealing with him again. So you can be cynical about it. But I do think it's, I do think it matters to show up. And, when like older people show up and show support for the trans community, I think that goes a long way, because understandably, a lot of folks look at people like us with the gray hair and everything like that. Well, you don't have gray hair. I have a lot of gray hair. And
I have some gray hair.
Yeah. And they think that we're maybe kind of narrow-minded and we are maybe kind of conservative. And I get that, because a lot of people in our age group or cohort or whatever you want to call it are exactly that. But when folks like us show up and say, nope, those folks are wrong, we're on the right side, I think it helps. I think it matters to see people across generations,
for sure,
across racial and ethnic groups, and religious groups and all that, show up and say, nope, we're on the right side of this. I think it matters.
I do too. And now our cat Gordy is now slumbering in her bed.
She's slumbering in her bed.
That is so sweet.
She started crying and then she put herself to sleep.
I love that.
One other thing I did want to mention just about the Bond Foster event, because we started out with that and I had it in my mind and then forgot, because I'm old, is that, so we'll put a link to our fundraising page. Our fundraising page will just allow you to make donations, like you said, in any amount, doesn't matter, big or small. The bigger, the better. No, I'm kidding. But you can also actually buy tickets to the event if you are in the Chicago area, or you will be on the weekend of May 9th, which is a Friday. So we'll put a link where people can buy tickets as well.
Yes.
There's two different things. Our fundraising page doesn't have the ability to order the tickets. But anyway, for what it's worth, you can do that. But please, think about it. This organization has been, they won about, I think they said 12 lawsuits against Trump in the first term. They've already gotten significant successes in 4 or 5 cases. They've partnered with a bunch of other organizations, but this costs a lot of money. Litigation is expensive. It requires a huge amount of time and effort. They have to have a big staff of lawyers to do this work. They have to pay their lawyers a living wage to do this work. But the money you donate goes right into the people, to people who are strategizing, organizing, bringing litigation. And, we talk about, we all have a power and we all have the ability to make change, and that's true. But any kind of movement requires a really complicated strategy. If you think of the civil rights movement, think of all the different moving parts. There were marches, there were protests, there were lawsuits, there were people lobbying Congress, lobbying local government, lobbying state government. It functioned on so many different levels. It was such a complex movement, but it worked because it worked on all these different levels. And so one of the things that Lambda Legal is doing is really part of a broader strategy to kind of make a better world. Litigation is a key part of it. And right now, the courts are really the only institution that's serving as a check on Trump's power.
And stopping it.
So it is really important. I mean, I'm not going to say that I have faith that the courts will be the ones who solve all our problems. And they can't be. They're not supposed to be, really. But right now, litigation is one of the most important things and one of the most effective things you can do to hold Trump in check. So we need organizations like the ACLU, like GLAAD, like Human Rights Campaign, like the NAACP, and like Lambda Legal to keep fighting. So that's my pitch to you.
Yes, and we appreciate your support. So thanks for watching this episode, number 78.
Yeah.
And
I'm looking at that. We have a computer screen. I'm looking at the computer screen going, no, it's not 78. It is 78.
It is. And if you have any questions or comments for us, obviously we welcome that. And we will see you next time. Good night.
Good night.